to a new video. Before I get into my favorite podcasts, which is obviously the title of this video, I want to talk about the medium that we're actually on, YouTube, because I just went over 1,500 subscribers. As of the recording of this video, I have 1,501 subscribers. So, I just want to take a minute to thank you all so much for subscribing to this channel. Just know that I appreciate you guys so much, and I am working very, very hard to maintain this channel and keep it going and keep making quality content for you guys. So thank you so much for sticking with me on YouTube. It means a lot. So let's talk about something that's not YouTube. Let's talk podcasts, because being a fully fledged adult with a full-time job at a desk means I sit and work with my headphones on, and it's not really cool to watch YouTube videos while working, especially because I have to look at a thing and be writing and correcting things, and looking over to watch a YouTube video isn't very conducive, but listening to podcasts is. So today I want to talk about my favorite podcasts and audio dramas, which are similar, not even similar. They're both podcasts, but like my favorite fiction podcasts and my favorite nonfiction podcasts, and fiction podcasts are also called audio dramas. Why am I over-explaining this? It's intuitive. Drama means fiction, unless it's YouTube drama, and I don't want to talk about that. We're not talking about that today. First, I want to talk about my favorite fiction podcasts, aka audio dramas. We just went over this. So the first one I want to talk about is Wolf 359, which is what got me into audio dramas in the first place, and it is one of my favorite podcasts in the world. And there are so many podcasts to listen to. It's a very, very large world that I am happy to be very obsessed with and very steeped in at the moment. So, Wolf 359 is an audio drama about a man named Douglas Eiffel who lives on a space station called the Hephaestus that orbits the sun called Wolf 359. And it's very fun. Doug's character is the narrator, and he's the communications director on this crew of 3 people and 1 AI, and it's just a lot happens on this mysterious ship. He is supposed to be scanning for any signs of communication, as a communications officer should, although he is less good at it than Lieutenant Uhura. He's very funny, he's very dry, he's got a great sense of humor and loads of references that no one else really understands, but we, the listener, understand because we are all living in the 21st century and know what Luke, I am your father means, and things like that. It's very, very fun, but I will say it gets real in the best way. Like I said, there are only 4 main characters to start with, but that changes, and I don't want to tell you how it changes because that will spoil things, and I don't want to tell you anything other than that it is a fun space audio drama with a really compelling main character, and all of the characters in it are compelling, especially the AI, whose name is Hira, and I love her. She is the purest soul. I love her so much. She will become your best friend, and her relationship with Eiffel is just the best. So that is all I am allowing myself to say about Wolf 359. If you have listened to it, please let me know so we can scream about it together, because I want to scream about it. I want to scream about Hira, I want to scream about Minkowski, I want to scream about Hilbert, I want to scream about Eiffel, and I want to scream about all the other characters that I'm not allowed to talk about because they're not introduced at the beginning, and even saying that there are other characters feels like a spoiler. Spoiler alert, there are more than 4 characters, but it starts with 4 characters who you absolutely love. Okay, let's move on before I say more things that I will regret. So the second audio drama that I want to talk about is actually my most recent find, and I caught up to where they're at in a matter of 2 days. 2 days of work days, because all I could do really was listen to this podcast, and that podcast is the Love and Luck podcast. If my pitch for Wolf 359 and sarcastic people in space doesn't sound like your thing, then the Love and Luck podcast is. This is the sweetest audio drama in the world, but it never gets saccharine. It's just full of heart and loveliness. So the Love and Luck podcast is a love story told through voicemails, and it follows Jason and Kane, 2 guys in Australia who meet and fall in love, and maybe a little bit of magic happens, but not too much, but there's still a plot, but not too much. It just feels like a warm blanket wrapped around you, and sometimes you just need that, especially when you're stressed out. Which I have been lately. It deals with a lot of things. One of the main arcs centers around homophobia, and one of the main characters, Kane, is a trans man, so sometimes that's talked about and explored, but never in a mean way. There are so many amazing side characters that get introduced through their relationship, through Jason and Kane's relationship, and I don't think it's a spoiler because it happens around halfway through the first season, but they end up moving in together and owning a bar, a gay-owned bar that doesn't serve alcohol and is just a safe space, and the whole podcast is just what you want a safe space to be for a queer person. And honestly, almost every queer identity has been represented at least a little bit in this podcast, and I don't think I've ever seen that in any other form of media, and done in such a loving way. I love this podcast so much. It's the sweetest thing in the world. And just, even the piano music that plays at the beginning is just like, yes, I'm now in the happy place. Even when things get difficult in the series, and they do, there is a plot. It's always, because it's through the voicemails of the main characters, and they love each other so much, you just feel loved by the podcast. It's so lovely. I don't know how many times I can say the word love about the Love and Luck podcast, but I really love it, and this podcast is still ongoing, so once you catch up, you can look forward to weekly uploads of new episodes, so that's always nice. Wolf 359 is done, so after you binge listen to it, it's over, and you'll be sad, and then you'll be wanting that warm hug of the Love and Luck podcast, I think. It's just so wonderful. But in case you're feeling the love a little too much and you need a little more edge in your life again, I recommend the third audio drama that I'm going to talk about, Time Bombs. So, Time Bombs is created by the same people as Wolf 359, but it is only a 3-episode series, and it's fantastic. It's about a New York City bomb squad, and it takes place during New Year's Eve, and our main character wants to beat the record of the most bombs defused in a year, and he only has a few bombs to defuse before he beats that record, and he really wants to beat that record, because you have to turn off your emotions a little bit in order to be a part of a bomb squad, and you have to have levity about the situation, and externalize as much of the human cost of bombs as possible in order to do your job and not just get crushed by the weight of the pressure. So it's a really fun 3-part series, and it's just delicious. So if you're missing some of the voices from Wolf 359, we get a few familiar voices, which is great. Zach Valenti, who plays Eiffel, plays a bunch of the side characters because he is excellent at doing different accents and voices. And then we get another person from Wolf 359 voicing the journalist. I don't want to talk about who the person is in Wolf 359. She plays a journalist in this one and is great. And yeah, it's just really exciting. You feel the rush of the pressure to defuse the bomb and everything, and the main character has narration, which is different, so you can hear his thoughts as well as what he's saying out loud, which is not something I've listened to before in an audio drama. I am new to the medium a little bit, but it's still not something that I've heard like this, because it feels like he's breaking the fourth wall and talking to you, but it's not like TV where in Fleabag or in House of Cards or in Gentleman Jack they can turn to you and be like wink and then turn back to their conversation. You're just hearing the thoughts, but you can differentiate between what he's saying out loud and what he's saying in his mind, so that's really interesting. Yeah, it's just fun. It's fun. I love a good action movie, and this feels like a good action movie, but it also has emotional depth, because Gabriel Urbina, who created Wolf 359 and Time Bombs, and Sarah Shackett, who created both as well, they're just so good at creating emotional depth in difficult situations, and really fun, action-packed situations. So, if you want some fun, if you want some edge, and if you just want a quick audio drama, something that won't take weeks and weeks and weeks to listen to, I highly recommend Time Bombs. It's really fun, really just fast-paced, and yeah, great. However, if you want something a little calmer, if you want to sit back with a cup of cocoa and listen to an audio drama, I recommend The Amelia Project. And I say cocoa on purpose because our main character, the interviewer, always sits with a mug of cocoa from Le Doux Magot. I don't know. It's French. He sits with French hot cocoa. Le Doux Magot. Le Doux Magot. I can't speak French, but it's a real place in France apparently, and their cocoa is excellent, so I guess if you go to France, get the cocoa from there. But this isn't about the cocoa. They go on a lot about hot cocoa in the Amelia Project, even though the actual show has nothing to do with hot cocoa, other than the fact that our main character likes it a lot. But basically, the interviewer is a man who disappears people for a living. People who want to fake their own deaths and start living a new life for whatever curious reason. The interviewer gets it done along with his trusty assistant, who does all the real work. They disappear people in very dramatic ways, but the interesting part is you don't see the action of the disappearance. What you do here is the interviewer's introduction to the person they're disappearing, and the interviewer is a very quirky, very fun character who just loves to collect stories, and if he finds your story boring, he will not take your case and will not disappear you, and you're gonna have to find another way to fake your own death. But it's just so fun and interesting, and the stories are very good. I will say I was not a fan of one of the stories where there's a twist about a sex change operation, and I say sex change on purpose because it's not a gender confirmation surgery. It's just Yeah. So that part got a little bit icky for me, but after that, stick with it. It gets good, and that storyline is never explored again. So, maybe skip the first episode. I don't think it's necessary. But the stories always have excellent twists in them. They're super interesting. And at the end of the first season, you get the first hints of a plot, that it's not just an episodic series of interviews with people with interesting stories who want to disappear. There's actually stakes involved for the interviewer, and it gets really interesting really fast. And the second season just started, so now's a good time to actually get through the full first season and start listening for the second season, because it's really, really good. I really enjoy it, and I really want to try that hot cocoa. So yeah, those are my audio drama, my fiction podcast recommendations, and I may or may not be working on my own at the moment with a friend. It's very, very much in the beginning stages. Please don't ask me about it. But let's just say my I can do that-ism has hit once more, because I think I can do this now. But let's move on to some nonfiction. This is a very eclectic list of podcasts, I will say, for my nonfiction podcasts. It was very difficult for me to narrow down to 4, but the first one I'm going to talk about is Pod Save America. They don't really need my recommendation. If you're not already listening to this podcast, I don't really know what you're doing. Basically, 3 of Obama's speechwriters created a podcast after Trump was elected. And they talk about the news, and they talk about the way things work inside Washington, and they also do a lot of work. They do a lot of good work, raising money, raising awareness, pushing for the Democratic Party to be better and do better. And also in last November in 2018, during those elections, they were working really hard to get out the vote and get people to vote blue and turn the House blue, which they did. Which, let's be real, America did. We all did it. We all did our part in turning the House blue, and it was great. But yeah, it's just a really solid podcast. It's not extremely left-leaning. It's not like a leftist podcast. It's very much a liberal podcast, but it is good to get that lens of things and kind of see what people who did work in Washington, D.C., in the White House, talk about how things worked when they were there, and how things are working right now, and how it's kind of a trash fire a little bit. But yeah, Pod Save America, I just love talking about and listening to people talking about politics. I don't talk about it a lot on this YouTube channel, but I do talk about it a lot. There are jokes in it. It's a good antidote to Trump, honestly. It's a good podcast. So the second podcast I am going to talk about, I think I have talked about on this channel before, but it is Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, and it was actually the first podcast I think I properly sat down and listened to and gave a try after seeing them live at NerdCon, Nerdfighteria, if any of you guys remember that from like 3 years ago. That was a fun convention. But yeah, I saw them live at NerdCon, Nerdfighteria, and basically what Harry Potter and the Sacred Text is a podcast where 2 people who were in Harvard Divinity School read Harry Potter chapter by chapter and discuss things they learned from that chapter and things they can take away from the chapter in their own lives, and basically reading it as if it were a sacred text, such as the Bible, the Torah, the Upanishads, all of the great sacred texts. I really love this podcast. It's just extremely positive, and it does really do its best not to be religious. It's more about learning from a book that we all love versus preaching. It's never preachy. It's actually a very gentle podcast, you know. They're talking about their own lives when they're talking about what they've learned and what they can take away from the chapter. They're really working hard in their own lives to make their lives better through Harry Potter, and I just think it's a beautiful lens through which you can look at Harry Potter. And it's one of the few things I still do that's Harry Potter related, because to be honest, I don't want to give J.K. Rowling any of my money anymore for a lot of reasons. And, but this is one thing that reminds me why I love this series so much and why it was so important to me growing up. And yeah, it's just a good podcast, and I think you should listen to it. Vanessa and Casper are the hosts, and they're very, very good at hosting this podcast, and they just have beautiful stories and talk about beautiful things, and it's nice. So the third nonfiction podcast I want to talk about is an interview podcast. This is Query with Cameron Esposito, and like the title suggests, it is very, very queer. It's great. So basically, Cameron Esposito is a lesbian comedian who is an amazing comedian. You should watch her special Rape Jokes. And what happens in this podcast is she interviews various people in the queer community who are successful or interesting, about their lives and about their careers and about how being queer has changed their lives or made their lives better, and everything great and queer, basically. My favorite part of this podcast is at the end, where she asks the interviewee if they have a queero or a queer hero, and someone who has helped them be themselves, basically. And it's such a beautiful question, and it's something I think about a lot, and I definitely have my queeros, and it's nice to look back at, like, your childhood or your past and remember all of the people that actually helped you, because I think a lot of the times we focus on the negative aspects of being queer, and it's not fun to think about those things. It's nice to think about nice things. It's just a really great interview series. There are so many interesting people that I've discovered, like Soak, the musician. She is great. Cameron Esposito herself is great. And there are just so many interesting people in the backlog of this interview series. Just pick one and listen to it. It's great. So the fourth podcast I want to talk about, the last podcast I want to talk about, is The Good Place, the podcast. So, this is another media-related podcast. Like, there's another media that you have to consume in order to listen to this podcast. Like with Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, you kind of have to read Harry Potter in order to listen to that. You have to watch The Good Place in order to listen to this podcast. But, if you're not watching The Good Place, what are you doing? You should watch The Good Place. But The Good Place, the podcast, is one of my favorite podcasts. Mark Evan Jackson hosts it. He plays Sean in The Good Place, and he also plays Kevin on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And I love this podcast, not only because my voice is in it in an episode, in one of the Brooklyn Nine-Nine episodes where they make a joke about my ridiculous username, which I admit is ridiculous, and they answer my question, which was a good question, if I say so myself, but because it's really interesting to see all of the different facets that make a TV show like The Good Place happen. There's so much production, costume design, writing, planning, philosophy. Like, there are so many different things involved in making a show like that possible, and Mark Evan Jackson interviews not just the actors and the writers, but also the set designers, the costume designers, the producers of the show, and really puts a lot of effort into asking interesting questions And basically I love Mark Evan Jackson. I want to protect him with my whole heart because more than being an actor on the show, he is a fan of the show, and it's so clear that he is one of us. And yeah, I love Mark Evan Jackson. I want him to be in all of the things. I want him to continue The Good Place, the podcast, after the show ends next season. Somehow. I want him to just be in my ears all of the time, because he's just lovely. This is also a podcast that ends on something really nice, which is Mark Evan Jackson asking his guests what's good, and they talk about something good in their lives, which just might be, oh, my dog was cute today, or my baby did something cute today, and it can also be like a really important charity that they work with, or it could be a social cause that's good. And it's just really interesting to hear the variety of answers of what is good, especially because so much of The Good Place is exploring goodness and how goodness is something that takes effort. And I just love it. It's so good to hear about a thing you love being made, and also to hear about nice, good things. How many times can I say good about The Good Place, the podcast? But also definitely listen to the episode where I am sort of in it, which is the second Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode that they did, because that was just so important. They had to do a whole second episode. Actually, if you do want to hear more of my voice, I have a politics podcast now. It's called On Your Left, so if Pod Save America is more center-left and you kind of lean a little more to the left than Pod Save America, come to On Your Left. Join me in my podcasting journey. It's if you like the sound of my voice, and 1,500 of you seem to, yeah, check out my podcast. It's so difficult to advertise the thing that you're in, but yeah, I have a podcast talking about politics, talking about gay news, talking about good news, and talking about mangoes, because mangoes are the most important food group, and yes, they are their own food group. Mango is beautiful. Mango is life. I will see you guys next time. Bye.
If you would like to support my video work, head on over to my Patreon and check out the perks.